Hello, welcome to Peace is the New Frontier, brought to you by Frontier Peace Advisors. My name is Bob Corkins. I'm the Chief Lobbyist for Frontier Peace, and we have with us today Ned Kelly, who's the chair of the Kansas Libertarian Party, and we've got Matt Clark, who's got an interesting new role with the state party. He's was a candidate this last election cycle for the Kansas House as well, but he's got a role with the state party now that we'll be talking about.
Ooh,
Yeah,
spoiler.
That's where I want to go.
Sneaky.
I want to go
keep
there.
watching to find out
I'm
what his
intrigued
new
by it.
role is.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Well,
Very exciting.
Ned, let's start with something that you and I talked about just a little bit ago. First, tell me how you came to libertarianism.
Sure.
When did you know these are my people?
Yeah. Probably when I walked into a room and everyone was arguing with each other. I grew up in my teens and in my 20s. I was really involved in the martial arts. You know, all about training and karate. This was back in New Jersey. As you can tell, I'm a fitness enthusiast and have been all my life. So the martial arts, that's probably where I learned the non-aggression principle. You know, you learn how to fight just for defense. And my dad was probably the first one who
And
told
that's
me.
at the core of the whole philosophy.
It sure is.
Right?
It
Non-aggression
sure
principle.
Not, you know, there's not, you're not prohibited from using violence per se, but you're not supposed to initiate it to rob or steal, any of those bad things.
Absolutely.
But you can defend yourself or others. So non-aggression principle. The nap. Everyone should take a nap. My dad probably pointed out to me that I sounded like a libertarian, and then a couple of years later, there was a man in New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey, running for governor, Murray Sabrin. New Jersey has an odd year for their gubernatorial, and he was running as a libertarian. And I said, "Oh, I think that's what I am. I've been told that's what I am." And I got involved. This was in 1997, and I got involved in his campaign and got pretty involved in the New Jersey Libertarian Party. Was vice chair for a while, and so what's that? 23 years ago now. My level of activism and involvement has, you know, it's fluctuated. A lot of people that's the case, but you know, I wound up here in the middle of the country.
And you've been chair of the state party since when?
Year and a half now.
Year and a half.
About halfway through my term. Yeah, our convention, the state party convention, is usually in April, or April, May, sometime around then. So it was in the 2019 convention where I got elected to chair.
Fantastic. And Matt, what's your connection with libertarianism?
I got started in the libertarianism. I guess Gary Johnson was my first libertarian vote in 2016. Once that light bulb kind of goes off that the other parties aren't really who they say they are. Growing up in Iowa, the presidential candidates came, practically to your doorstep. And so I was pretty interested in the 2008 campaign. I had a person I liked, and by the time the 2012 campaign came around, I saw the same candidates coming back with completely different messages. That's when you start to kind of realize, oh, wait a minute, I might have been swindled in 2008.
Did you hear much of the discussion about the concept of peace and non-aggression in those meetings with prominent politicians?
Especially in 2008, 2012, there was not much peace discussion. It was all about war in the Middle East.
There was one in 2008 and 2012 within the Republican Party who spoke up for peace and non-aggression. Of course, that's Ron Paul, but I think he got booed at some of those debates for mentioning things like I don't know if you use the word non-aggression, but for those concepts.
Well, and in the big picture of things, peace seems to be lacking from most of the political discussion today, doesn't it?
It does. You can find it here or there, but as far as even within the Democratic Party, it's. Can I take us off on a tangent here real quick?
Sure.
So yesterday I was in a Zoom, a panel discussion. I wasn't on the panel, but I attended the panel via Zoom.
Okay.
And it was a coalition of progressive, liberal, peace activists. There was Code Pink, great organization if you've heard of them.
No.
Danny Sursen, it's S-J-U-R-S-E-N. He's right here in Kansas. An avid anti-war prolific writer. He's a vet, and he's very progressive, but he's very in line with us, as far as foreign policy and also other civil liberties. Anyway, so it was a great panel discussion, and it's clear that even within the Democratic Party, there is a strong urge for some of these what might be considered traditional Democratic viewpoints, or for peace, for civil liberties, but they don't feel they're getting it. They certainly don't feel they're getting it from Biden. So it was kind of inspiring, promising discussion.
Matt, did you experience that as you were going on the knocking on doors on the campaign trail this last year? Any discussion, any foreign policy discussion? I mean, I wonder
no,
if that ever came up.
Very little foreign policy discussion. So
It was just for the Kansas legislature.
yeah, I was running for the state legislature.
Not too much we get to say about foreign policy at the state level, but
True that. I mean, we had a candidate running for U.S. Senate, so that impacts foreign policy.
okay. Well, there are some examples. I mean, there are resolutions passed at the State House from time to time. The House, the Senate will just to convey the sense of the Kansas legislature to our legislative or congressional delegation or others at the national level. Different resolutions get voted on from time to time, but so it's not devoid of any foreign policy discussion at the State House. But
yeah.
what are the big state issues that you heard people talking about on the campaign trail? From a libertarian perspective, were there any that you would say that's somebody that doesn't even recognize that they're a libertarian?
Yeah, the one issue that really seemed to resonate with people that they weren't necessarily aware of, but was the prison population here in Kansas. They were shocked to hear that we have over 100 inmates shipped to a private prison in Arizona due to overcrowding. Which, although we do have some very good news, and that's that those prisoners are starting the process of coming back home to Kansas, which is exciting.
Well, and that would be a direct function of how many crimes we have on the books.
Yes,
Kansas,
a lot
right?
of crimes that should not be crimes are on the books, for sure. So a lot of people didn't realize that we have incarcerated that many people here in Kansas, and once they realized that there is a problem here, they were open to some libertarian solutions to reducing that prison population.
Which could bring up marijuana decriminalization.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
as a libertarian, I want to end the war on drugs completely, but it is certainly popular in Kansas among the people, not among our overlords, but among the people to at least stop the war on marijuana.
Right.
At least stop locking people up for medicinal marijuana, if not recreational marijuana. So that one resonates with
Well, and
most people.
that's one that Frontier Peace has been quite active on over its 1 year history here, both advocating for medicinal marijuana, and we testified in support of a bill that would have repealed the felony penalties for simple marijuana possession, which failed in committee because the district attorneys got to a lot of the committee members and said, no, we need that leverage. We need to be able to layer those felonies on top of one another to have the strongest plea bargaining position we can get. What would you say to thinking like that, to an argument like that? What about the practical need to have more felonies on the books?
It's extortion. It's bullying. It's
Coercive.
immoral. Yeah, it's coercion at its finest. Let's just see what we can. And one of the things driving it, of course, is forfeiture, civil asset forfeiture. It's because it's a moneymaker for the police and for the state.
Which explains a lot of the motivation for the war on drugs, right?
Absolutely, it's disgusting.
There's absolutely a prison industrial complex as well. We hear a lot about the military industrial complex. There is a lot of money being made in prisons, even if they're state run.
So what
Can I-
sort of?
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead, follow up.
Not necessarily everyone watching this video knows what we're talking about. Civil asset forfeiture means if someone gets pulled over, gets arrested, gets taken aside, under the suspicion of having drugs. The police might take their car, their possessions, and if they have any cash on them. They don't even need to be arrested. They don't even need to be arrested, let alone stand trial. And if they have, just the suspicion of dealing in drugs, and you can probably tell me, I'm sure both of you can tell me the specifics a lot better than I know them, that's gone. There might be a process to try to get that back, but for the most part, that's
You
just
have to
gone.
prove the innocence of your property. Is the basic legal process.
That the
You have
property
to
was
prove the
in no
innocence of
way
your property.
involved in illegal conduct.
Yes.
So of course they want to keep these immoral, victimless crimes on the books, keep those laws on the books because it's a moneymaker.
Well, thinking about crimes in general, then, what sort of things should remain criminally penalized under libertarian philosophy?
Sure. To the degree that we do have a government, if we're going to have a state and a government at all, the purpose of that government is to defend our liberty. To make sure that, as we talked about earlier with aggression, that I'm not aggressing against you. Rape, murder, stealing your stuff. That would be a legitimate role for police and a judicial system. And of course, if we're talking about it, defense against foreign invaders, perhaps as well.
Well, and maybe all this discussion of various crimes and policy brings us to this new role for you now, Matt, with the state party. Tell us what the political director for the Libertarian Party is going to be responsible for.
That's the role. That's what it was, by the way. If you were guessing, political director, Matt Clark.
Okay.
Political director. Very exciting. The role will be to identify causes in the state that the Libertarian Party wants to try to galvanize some of our resources behind. Try to, we had about 68,000 people vote for our Senate candidate across the state. So how can we start to galvanize those people to stay active beyond the election cycle? So that's something that I'm hoping to do, to identify issues at the State House, and also to identify local issues as well, at the county or city level, that we want to try to rally our people behind.
Don't forget the other half of it, though, please, sir.
Recruit.
Yes,
Okay.
let's get
We
those
only have
candidates to run for office.
I was one of 5 people to run for State House in Kansas last election cycle. We had, I think, 3 of us running active campaigns.
Oh, and I remember seeing
we
some of the
need
numbers.
to-
You really outperformed libertarians nationally. I mean, pulling in some races 8 to 15% of the vote.
I don't know about 15.
There was, I think, a gentleman down in.
Yes, you're right.
Oh,
that wasn't even-
Lawrence.
Yes.
Lawrence was one. Where
Oh, yeah,
about
he,
15%.
He had a 2-way race there in Lawrence. So yeah, there were
That's
some
right.
2-way races nationally that did very well. Ricky Harrington in Arkansas pulled about 33% of the vote. Won several major counties in Arkansas. The gubernatorial candidate in Indiana pulled about 12%. And here our candidates that actually ran for the State House doubled the votes typically of our Libertarian presidential candidate. So showing that some active campaigning does have an effect, and so we're trying to increase those numbers.
Fantastic. So as political director, if I'm paraphrasing this accurately, it sounds like you're identifying those issue priorities among libertarian voters in Kansas?
Yeah, we'll try to pay attention to what's going on at the State House, identify some bills that I think libertarians would like to get behind, legalizing medical marijuana as liberally as we can. Obviously we support full legalization. However, that's not too likely, but let's at least take that first step this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And I think ultimately, and even our thinking of Frontier Peace would be consistent with that. That ultimately, if we can get full legalization, that's ideal. But let's work for as much progress as we can realistically obtain.
Because I know the State House was largely considering a medical marijuana bill last session that would not allow
Or at least
people
4
to
of them,
smoke
actually.
it. So trying to legalize it with as like I said, as liberally with as little government involved in the process as is possible, given the makeup of the State House.
And when we're using the term liberally, we mean it in a classical sense.
Classical liberalism. And that was one of my epiphanies in my political road that I've taken is realizing I'd become so conservative. I don't think it's a line where you've got extreme left and extreme right on a horizontal plane. I think it's a circle. And I came to the conclusion that I'd become so conservative, I was now liberal. and
Sometimes it's a diamond.
Diamond,
The Nolan chart.
Okay.
You know, so you measure two different axes: your pro-freedom level on personal or social issues. You know, for privacy and freedom of speech and drug prohibition. How much are you for freedom there? Or would it be this way if I'm looking? And the other axis is fiscal issues. You know, are you for the individual being able to keep that which they produced, without taxation or as little taxation? How pro freedom are you there? And the conservatives tend to be pro freedom fiscally, but less personally, and just the opposite for progressives, pro freedom on personal issues,
Well,
but not so much with
another way of rephrasing this non-aggression principle is the term's generally coercion, right?
Sure.
Whether you agree to a given level of coercion being appropriate. I've seen a lot of desire on the part of both major political parties to exercise coercion in getting their views across. And so explain a little bit how libertarianism would differ from that.
Libertarianism is about as little coercion as possible. I mean, that's where we draw the line, is aggression against other people. Whether by force or by fraud is in there.
So the legitimate purpose and function of government would be to address that direct harm that one person could perform against another.
You don't have to look far. Just the current issue with lockdowns and mask mandates. That's what coercion is. The government. In this case, the government isn't directly, going up to people and making them do stuff. They're kind of doing it secondhand through businesses. By telling the businesses you're not allowed to have people in your store or your restaurant without masks, or for while they're walking before they sit down, whatever it is. But so it's kind of a secondhand coercion, and then they'll fine the businesses, or they threaten to shut down the businesses.
So you're penalizing, you're fining a business for something its customers did,
Right.
or didn't do.
So in an ideal libertarian non-aggression situation, whether you believe this so-called pandemic is as harsh, as scary, as serious as it is, doesn't matter. It's not I personally don't. I think it's way overblown. But that's not, even if I thought it was as dangerous as many are making it out to be, I would still be on the side of pro-freedom. Because it's up to the individual.
And it's not a question, is it, of what a person should do, out of concern, care for others.
Because voluntarily people were starting to make these decisions. Voluntarily people were starting to make, at least back when it seemed like there was a possibility hospitals would be overrun. It turns out they're not, but at 6-8 months ago, that seemed like it was predicted to be a possibility. People were taking precautions voluntarily. They were staying home, were avoiding each other, and businesses were doing the same. A lot of businesses shifted to working from home. But government often is a trailing indicator of what the people are voluntarily doing, and decide to catch up and make it a political issue, and then start mandating it. And of course, they do it in an ineffective way, coercive.
Well, libertarians wouldn't have any problem with political leaders, government encouraging the use of masks and social distancing, and nothing wrong with encouragement, right?
I think
in public education, to let them know how this can benefit other people.
I don't have a problem with any individual using their platform, and if a politician has some degree of fame and bully pulpit, that's fine. But I would say no, it's not any politician's job to watch out for my health. That's not their job.
but the line gets crossed when you use the power of government to coerce behavior in one
Exactly.
direction.
Exactly.
Well, Ned, was there anything that Matt may have missed in this new role that the political director is going to do? You said recruiting, of course. You reminded him of that, and then the prioritizing issues. You mentioned a couple. Any others to address? You mentioned the cannabis liberalization.
Well, to me, it comes down to this, and this is the focus.
Crimes, the
Sorry to interrupt.
prison overcrowding.
Yes.
is another one we touched on.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. But to me, it comes down to this. The Libertarian Party of Kansas the focus is at the local level. So my focus is supporting leadership in supporting the local activists. In one county, they might take up a particular bill, or they might take up a particular issue, and it might be very different in a different part of the state. So yes, I think it's Matt's job to identify what resonates with particular people and to support them in their choices, in their passions at their local level.
I'll be a little blunt about this maybe, but do you think that the Libertarian Party has missed a lot of opportunities over the year by not being more engaged in the legislative process?
Well, the Libertarian Party, you mean me?
Not pointing fingers at you. I mean, the movement. I would say generally 50 years old is when it really started picking up steam in the United
Just had
States.
its 49th birthday.
So why isn't there more to show for 50 years of progress of the Libertarian Party?
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Could it be the lack of engagement in the lawmaking process?
That's just one area. I mean, the party, both nationally and at the state level, has a couple of different functions. One of them, yes, is to engage in the legislative process and try to influence the legislative process towards freedom. Another function, which goes hand in hand with that, is running candidates, trying to run candidates so that we can influence and have effectiveness in the legislative process. And another function is education and promotion, inspiring people. That goes hand in hand as well, because when you run candidates like Matt Clark, you get a chance to communicate with people and educate people what is the non-aggression principle that we've been talking about today. So could we have been more engaged with the legislative process? Sure, but it's a multi-pronged effort, and we need to do all of those. We need to do all of those tasks.
I'm relatively new to the Libertarian Party. I didn't vote Libertarian until 2016. Didn't really get active until 2018. I attended my first state convention. But I don't think. I guess I don't know as much of the history on this aspect, but I don't think the activism side would get as much attention. It may be happening more than we realize at these different county levels, and a lot of it isn't necessarily changing the law, but maybe stopping new laws or new bad things from happening. Douglas County, a few libertarians helped organize a nice coalition. They were part of a coalition that helped stop a unnecessary jail expansion in Lawrence. I don't know how much public attention libertarians got for that, but I know that they played an instrumental role in that sort of activism.
I think it's an ongoing battle, but yes, they've had some successes along the way.
Yeah, they're still trying to use this really old law to pass this.
Well, there's an old expression that all politics is local.
Yes,
right?
yeah. Some of those same people have had success in effectively decriminalizing marijuana at that local level, but they've gotten an agreement that the charges will just be a couple of dollars.
Douglas County, for
Yeah,
example.
that's exactly what it comes from.
Yeah. Well, if a big part of the game is candidate recruitment and helping along candidates that promote those issues that are locally the most important to the libertarian voters, it brings to mind thought of the not the legislative process, but the voting process.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another proposal that I've been quite intrigued by as we've talked to libertarians around the state, and that is the idea of ranked choice voting. Do you know anything about it, or
Sure.
would you care to express what merit?
Do you want to
see
take
in
this
it?
one?
You can go for it.
All right. So rather than kind of a winner take all, which encourages people to not vote for their favorite candidate, often they'll vote for the lesser of two evils. You know, a lot of people may have wanted to vote for Joe Jorgensen this past election, but they thought they'd be wasting their vote, so they'll vote for whichever of the legacy parties, the old parties, whichever of those two candidates they hate just a little bit less. Well, with ranked choice voting, you get to rank your votes, 1, 2, 3, 4, however many candidates. And you can put Joe Jorgensen or whoever the Libertarian candidate is as number 1, and then just in case that candidate doesn't win, your second choice vote gets counted. So people, the idea hopefully is they're less afraid of wasting their votes. So these third-party
Well,
candidates.
and to clarify a little bit, when you say if their first preference doesn't win, it's sort of a runoff effect, isn't it?
Sure.
If you've got a three-way race and none of the three have 50% or more support of the voters, then the third one drops off.
Yes.
And then you consider what for people that voted for that third candidate, you consider what their second choice
Yes.
would be.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you apply
So,
the
so
vote
having
that way.
multiple rounds of voting, that's the way we do it at our national convention. Well, actually, in our state convention as well, we have rounds of voting. If someone doesn't get a majority, 50% plus 1 in the first round, then yes, we eliminate the lowest total vote getter. Sometimes you eliminate more than one, whatever. But then you have a second round of voting. Now, when you do it that way, people might change their vote. All ranked choice voting does is get people to rank all those votes right at the
Yeah,
beginning.
you go to the polls one time,
Exactly.
right? And you identify what your A choice, B choice, and C choice would be for any given race. Or you've got the choice too of not putting an alternative
Sure.
B or C. You
Yeah,
can,
you do.
you can say, I'm voting for this one candidate and none others.
Definitely.
Sure.
So what would be the plus on that? What's the appeal of going to ranked choice voting?
It encourages people to vote for who they want to win. Right now, some people tend to treat voting as like a bet on a horse race, and they want to vote for someone who they think has a chance to win. This helps eliminate that possibility, or it helps drive people away from that thought process a little bit. It can save money. In states like Georgia's currently having a runoff election for both Senate candidates. It could save
That
money.
would have been
for-
over and done with by now.
It would have been done
They
with
had
on
ranked choice
election
voting.
day or the 2
Yeah.
weeks following election day. It can help in the primary process. This is what I think the appeal to the legacy party should be, is when
Well,
you have
it-
13 people running for a seat, a winner may win your nomination with 25% of the vote. 75% of the people don't support them, but they get the nomination with that small but loyal base. So it could help.
It strikes me that it would really erode the sentiment that my vote doesn't count.
Right.
Yes, definitely.
That's the hope. By the way, your counterpart as a lobbyist in Missouri, Larry Bradley, if anyone wants to, or if you want to get in touch with him, or anybody watching wants, he's a strong advocate for ranked choice voting as well.
Excellent. I believe it's in operation only in one state right now, up in
Maine.
Maine.
Yeah.
Uh,
It didn't have as much success getting a bigger vote for the Libertarian candidates as we were hoping, but maybe it's just too early yet. People got to get used to it. I don't know, but
Well,
I think it's an experiment that's still.
And I would think if nothing else, it gives you a very clear picture of how strong your party support is in a given state or
Hopefully.
locale. If you've got people voting truly on their preferences.
Hopefully, yeah.
Well, those are all encouraging. I think that it's certainly one that has some appeal. We're in the process now of polling Frontier Peace members to find out what their issue priorities are. We fully suspect that the number one will be the same carryover from last year, which was medical marijuana. But we'll see what our own members say, and maybe that'd be interesting news to the state party as well, in terms of where
Sure.
Definitely. We'll be paying attention.
that sort of issue prioritization that you said you're going to be concentrating on.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I want to thank both Ned and Matt for joining us here at Frontier Peace today. Remember, peace is the new frontier. Thank you, and tune in to this website for future podcasts and videos of more of the same and a lot of different issues. So, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.